Thank you both for agreeing to do this interview. This is our new version of what our look ahead is going to be. And, we were really interested in getting some industry subject matter expert opinions as we move forward in this and help our members. Significant shifts in what clients expect from agencies today.
I don't think in their heart there is a big shift that way, but they still are looking for partners that can help their businesses succeed relative to whatever the important business issue is. Now, there are structural things that have been changing that change maybe what the right agency might look like, or change balance between how much I do inside my company versus how much I outsource to a partner. But I actually think that almost for the forever in time, that basic issue of I've got a business issue or business challenge, probably an ongoing one that I really need help with, and I don't have all the right pieces in well, or maybe I could never have all the right pieces in so well. And so I find an agency partner or series of partners that can help me with those things.
Yeah, I would agree. I don't think that things have shifted that much when marketers think about their agency partners, but I do think there's tremendous pressure on marketers from non-marketers to do things differently. For instance, there is tremendous pressure on marketers from the C-suite to use more AI to be more efficient without having any idea what that means or what that is and how you would do it. And so marketers now have to think about how they answer that question when it's the question of how would you use a different tactic that people are telling you should use, that don't understand why you should use it, don't understand what it can do for you, and expect a 30% increase in efficiency, a made-up number. So that has changed in that marketers now have pressures from non-marketers to do things differently. But when you really get to the heart of a conversation with a marketer, they want a strategic business partner in their agency, plain and simple.
Something to what Robin was just saying, because Robin and I were just in a group of CMOs. We help host a roundtable of CMOs, and there were roughly 15 CMOs, and the conversation was all about AI. And there was this interesting take, which is the CMOs are all being asked by other parts of the C-suite, where are they going to get their 30% efficiency gains? And it turns out there are enough people in the room that could raise their hand and say, there is no data to support 30% anyway, or frankly, there's no data to support almost any number, and it will be different by client, et cetera. But I think that sort of is one of the ways that this challenge is coming across to CMOs, because it's hard to defend, per what Robin was saying, right? There's a lot of stress. And the stress is coming from there's always been stresses coming from the C-suite, but this is yet a new, much more demanding one, because when you hear numbers like 20 and 30%, these are like new unattainable goals in the near term.
Do you think that when a marketer, CMO is told, you got to save this X%, whatever it is, are they turning internally to say, how can we do this? Or are they relying on their agencies to help them figure out how to use AI in whatever way they can? Not necessarily saying anybody's saving 20, 30%, because to your points, all the data shows that there is no data on that. But are they looking internally, or are they tending to ask their agencies, help me, how do we get there?
So it depends. If they have an in-house agency, they're looking for their in-house agency to effectuate that efficiency metric. And they are looking to their agencies to figure out, so if we're going to pay you the same amount we paid you last year, because my budget can't go up, we're expecting that there'll be some efficiencies and we can maybe add some scope to the same amount of money. because they're expecting that agencies who all claim that they're using AI, that their agencies should be seeing some efficiencies too, and they'd like that passed on to them. If they don't have an in-house agency, they're completely reliant on their agency to effectuate the 30% efficiency number through the agency fees with it, or maybe there are an increased scope for the same fee.
Mhm.
And I do think that the conversations are people talking to each other with a metric that's been imposed on them by non-marketers, trying to just figure out how to make it show up. And I have yet to talk to a client that has figured this out, or even an agency that has been able to figure this out when it gets down to the brass tacks of now let's figure out our scope of work, the items you need done, and we believe it will cost you given the way that we operate, assuming fairness across the board.
Initial perspective of, I'm going to keep my fee flat, but you've got to give me more, is a very different scenario than I'm cutting my fee. It's an interesting one, because if, I've heard the term force multiplier thrown around a lot in terms of what AI actually is or can help be. And the idea of, we're not going to cut the fee, but we are going to ask you to deliver more, feels like that is a reasonably fair conversation.
Yep.
And, to throw it, since Steve and I were just at ProcureCon, to throw it into sort of procurement speak, it's a little bit of a difference between a hard cost savings and cost avoidance. And if they can go the cost avoidance route and still show that, hey, we're doing 30% more assets or whatever it may be for the same amount of money, that's answering that question.
We're not seeing a lot of clients coming to us with a reduced budget. Everyone wants to save money, especially in the media space, and especially if they've had an agency for a long time, creative or otherwise. There's probably some savings that they'll be able to make, because as contracts grow over time, they bloat. It just happens. So they're looking for savings, or they'd like to see savings, but they're not looking. The impetus for a review is not, oh, we've got to find savings, so we have to look at a new agency. And when companies are coming to us, or old clients coming back to us saying, hey, we're trying to negotiate year 2, year 3, year 4, what do you think about how this conversation is going? We're not hearing about reduced marketing budgets, but we are hearing clients say that they're going to need a little bit more. Or maybe in some cases, a lot more.
Yeah. Well, again, I think that's a discussion an agency would much rather have than, well, you're going to cut your fee by 30%. What are we going to do? Yeah.
I wish agencies were better at it. That discussion.
I think they have to be. As the line between agencies, consultancies, and platforms continues to blur, how are you seeing RFPs and search processes evolve?
I can start that, Robin. I think this is a scale of the client question, because I think historically enterprise size clients and small clients each somehow got hands on keyboards and started working directly with the platforms. It's the mid-market clients that don't have as much of that going on, and I think that continues to today. The other part of that is that it's only the enterprise clients that think about consultants, and the way they think about consultants as providers of marketing services, that is, right? To think about the Accentures and the Deloittes. The way those consultants go to market, the way they get their business is very different from most agency work, because it's coming from inside an established relationship. It's often spurred by C-suite relationships, etc. It's not as they simply aren't involved in as many overt pitches with non-consultant firms. The way very different from a typical agency relationship, where if you put a media account, for instance, in review, you're going to have a bunch of different media agencies pitching it. It's a different model. And so from one standpoint, I think the answer to the question is determined by the scale of the client, but also it's the consulting part of it is sort of off camera for most clients. It's not really a consideration for most of the mid-market and it's definitely not for the smaller firms. So to answer the actual question is how is it blurring? I don't think it's blurring in the face of most agencies and most clients. I think for the giant companies, they've been heavy into the consulting space for a long time, and it was a natural evolution. For the smallest clients, they already have hands on keyboards working directly with the platforms. In the middle, if there is a change, it could be that the platforms, of course, are competing with agencies and going directly to accounts. Having said that, that is still mostly the largest accounts because even the platforms aren't staffed to go after much of the middle market.
Looking into the crystal ball, what qualities will define the most future fit agencies in the next 3 years?
Most future fit. Well, I think there's some things that will not change. And I continue to believe, and I mean, you talk to us enough, Matt, that you know that I'm going to start with strategy as it never goes away. It still has to be the essence and the basis of great agency work. There has to be a strategic element at every agency, whether it's present, past, or future. You have to be able to understand what the business challenge is that the marketer has. Nobody wants to spend money on marketing. Everybody wants to spend money on R&D and on building new things, but they know they have to market. So the marketing has to deliver on the business goals and objectives, whether it's store traffic or market share or sales, whatever it is. There's some business metrics that marketing has to help move. And if you don't start with that and then figure out how you understand the target audience and you understand the competition and you understand the brand and how do we find the white space for this brand to talk to that consumer in a way that the competition either can't or doesn't, we can't move the business. And that is the past, it is the present, and it is the future. That does not change. People like to spend time thinking about what technologies. Agencies are going to have to be able to talk better about AI. They're going to have to help companies, marketers, figure out what the right talk track is about AI. Because the clients don't know how to do this. They don't. I mean, as Steve said, we sat in a room with 15 CMOs, and honestly, they are puzzled on a good day about how to answer the question around AI. So the conversations around AI, I think agencies could help with that, and that's a future focus to me. One of the CMOs that was in the room asked the question. She said one of the questions we ask when we get our marketers and C-suite together. They're a very, I don't want to name them here because I don't have permission to do that, but they're a very forward-thinking, progressive company around sustainability. They're very customer-centric. And they said, AI is actually terrible for the environment. So how does that play with our sustainability efforts? It's interesting. And second, we are all about our customer. If AI doesn't improve our customer experience, why are we so hot to use it? And I wrote both of those down, and I don't always write things down in meetings, but I never, ever heard any marketer talk about AI that way. That's future focus to me. That's progressive future focus thinking. And agencies can bring that. So I mean, I don't, that wasn't three. I know you asked for three, but that's where I'll land. The strategy piece, past, present, and future, and then helping clients with to figure out what the talk track is for I think is a strong future focus for agencies.
What do you think is at risk if agencies lean too far into the tech implementation versus creative strategy, or vice versa?
My answer to that would be what Robin just said, which is it comes back to strategy. And I'm almost I hope agencies aren't sort of trying to balance that without the strategic underpinning of what they need to do for their client's business. The agency world has always had a combination of creativity and technology. The ability to shoot a 35 millimeter commercial and get it to air had a fair amount of technology involved back in the day. And today those technologies have evolved and there's more. And but it's still, all of those are in service of the strategies necessary to solve a client's problems, as opposed to let's have a bunch of technology that's sort of loosely connected to what the client really needs. And I could say the same thing about creative. Creative should only exist in service of a client's problems. This is one of our friends, Peter Bray likes to say, the great creative, he likes to say, people have to pay to go to a museum, but we have to pay people to watch advertising. And that sums up the difference, that advertising has a business role to serve. And figuring out what that role is the crux of success or failure. And that role will define the right technology necessary, will define the right creative, will define the right experience. But getting that strategy piece right is in essence the be all and end all, because if you don't get that right, the odds are you're not going to have the right tactics, and you're probably going to at best underperform, if not just fail outright.
It's really, where do you see the overlap or tension between agency as platform and agency as strategic partner?
I don't think agencies are platforms. There are platform companies and they have platforms and there are people that need platforms, and you buy a platform or you lease a seat or you whatever it is that you do, they're a platform. Agencies have to be more than platforms because platforms are commodities. Agencies don't want to be commodities. They want to be strategic thought partners, business partners with their clients. And so if you're putting yourself out there as just a platform or a solution provider, you have commoditized yourself. I don't think it's a good idea.
Which of these directions do you think is more future-proof? Kind of being a platform or being a strategic partner, in terms of being aligned with what clients need?
Listen, if clients aren't feeling like they're getting good value from agencies, they're gonna feel less good probably about a platform that doesn't provide presumably that added strategic muscle that an agency would provide. Agencies are fascinated by platforms because platforms involve very little human interaction and have very high margins.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like a great thing, but it also to me sounds like a completely different business model than I need a strategic partner that can really help me elevate everything. And if I'm an agency, I'm thinking my future still is in being that partner that can help elevate everything, not in I can save you a penny or a dime here and there because it's all automated.
How, if you are you seeing any procurement metrics evolving to value these new forms of partnerships with agencies?
It's interesting. I think procurement metrics are driven by the culture of the company. So if you've got a company that is, and leadership in the company that for whatever the reason is about saving money and efficiencies, and it could be for very good reasons. It could be that we've had to do reductions in staff, so we've got to spend less money in all places, whatever their business situation is. then procurement has to follow that lead. And you're going to have metrics that are all about cost and savings. If you've got, if the leadership of the company is driven hard by an M&A mentality, you're going to have people that like to negotiate down to the tiniest penny, and procurement will follow. If you've got a company that's led by marketers, rarely do we see it, but sometimes you get it. Marketers who believe that what we should do is get the best, closest, most important connection to our consumer, then procurement follows that lead too, and they focus less on let's get the cheapest, let's get and instead let's get the very best value for what we're trying to solve for. So I don't think that there's trends in procurement per se that I'm seeing. I'd be interested to see if Steve sees something different. He works more closely with procurement usually than I do when it gets down to the point of negotiation and KPIs. But procurement partners through the review process, I don't see a big shift in procurement all in. Procurement follows the culture of the company and the lead of the leaders.
I agree completely with what Robin just said. You know, there was I've noticed a bunch of posts coming out of ProcureCon that was in Austin last earlier in the week, and about these dramatic changes in procurement and how transparency is way up, and it's going to change models for agencies, and it's great for indie agencies. And I read those posts and I thought I must be working in a different universe than these folks are that are making these posts, because procurement is changing very slowly, probably because it is the conservative place in an organization. Now, its role, like Robin says, varies by organization, but boy, they got to keep the lights on. They have to keep the CFO happy. They've got a lot of masters. And because of all that stuff, there are no rapid changes happening in procurement organizations. And yeah, I'll just leave it at that. I think that it's if there are evolutions, they'll be slow. They like to talk about outcomes, but at the end of the day, they're worried about being fiscally responsible within a measured calendar period, because that's what Wall Street needs. That's what their stakeholders in the C-suite need. And it's a vital and important role. It's not one that should be poo-pooed. They're playing a really important role for the organization, but it's by definition a conservative role.
What are clients struggling most to articulate about what they really want and need from agencies today?
That's a very good question. And it varies by client, of course. That's the easy answer, I can say. To stall a little longer. I don't know that they're struggling all that much to articulate what they want. The problem for clients is that they start with the bottom of the conversation instead of the top of the conversation. So when we first talk to clients about looking for a new agency, they list tactics. I need an agency that can do this, production in-house, content, SEO, whatever the things are. They rarely talk about account service early on, which is nuts because that's the key to success. And they rarely talk about strategy. It's later, and since most searches are not run by search consultants, they don't have the assistance of people like us, and there are other fine search consultants too that help with this, to be able to pull apart that thread, right? It's think of it as a ball of yarn that's all tangled. You've got to straighten that out to be able to really see what the whole skein of yarn looks like, as opposed to just the pieces you can grab. And clients are grabbing at certain things that they want. And I think what they struggle most with is the holistic view of what an agency could do for them and what kind of relationship they want to have with the people who work at the agency. And strategically, what are they expecting from the agency? They're expecting business strategy, they're expecting creative strategy, media strategy. That's what I think they struggle with the most, being able to articulate that. And if an agency could have that inside scoop, I think it would help them a lot, not just when they're pitching, but also once they're on the playing field, clients stop sharing business changes and business strategy changes, and the agencies are in the dark. It makes it really hard to be effective.
What's the one thing that will never change about the value of agencies, no matter how the models evolve?
I think it's that agencies exist largely to be able to do something really important for clients that they can't do themselves, but need to succeed. Now, what those things are will evolve over time. They certainly have evolved over time. 15 years ago, there was no such thing as an influencer. There were, right? 25 years ago, there was no such thing as programmatic advertising. Maybe we'd be better off if there still wasn't, right? But these things evolve, and that impacts the scope. But the notion of the scope, I think, that's enduring is I have these business problems, I need help solving them, and I can't really do it well myself. No, to some extent, regardless of how I'm structured, because my business may be to make sports athletic shoes and maybe to make software. It's not to do that agency work specifically. And so I think, and one of the things agencies need to, I think, constantly remind themselves of is that piece. What can I do that's really important for the business that it would be really, really hard for somebody to do inside? And this is, by the way, back to your question earlier about platforms versus agencies. This is where when agencies lose to some extent the thread and feel like they have to become more like platforms, I think they've lost themselves already because they're eliminating. They can't compete with the platforms, by the way, number one. And number two, because they're not really technology companies. And we've seen that in how the big giant holdcos are investing heavily in technology companies to help them do things that a technology company would do. And so I think that's the crux of the issue, and it is but it does involve constant reinvention for the agencies, and that's because the marketplace changes, technology changes, and our consumers are changing.
That they have to show up being able to do all the things, and they have to show that they're AI driven. They have to show that that they're a platform. They have to show that they're a solution provider. There's lingo that comes and goes over time in our business. And right now, I think four things that there are several things that come to mind most often. AI is everywhere, and I think agencies think they have to say that they're AI driven and they're AI, something or other, something AI. They have to use the word solutions somewhere, especially a media agency. Like they have to use the word solutions. Clients have never hired us to find a solution provider. They hired us to find agencies that can help them solve their business challenges. And there might be solutions or capabilities or combinations of capabilities that they're looking for. But this notion that if we don't use the word solutions, we're out of touch. Providers, platforms. Platforms is another. We talked about that. And then there's the consultant word. Well, the way to fight against the consultants is we'll say we're consultants. We'll just claim it. We'll just name it. We'll just say we are the C-suite whisperer or something. And I think that's the biggest danger is agencies trying to be what they're not, trying to be what everybody who they're most afraid of. I'll just put that costume on so that people can see the consultant in us, or they can see the AI-ness of us, or whatever it is they think the client wants. And my counsel back is, first of all, everybody's talking about that stuff, so that doesn't differentiate you. Not every client's looking for all those things. And who the heck are you anyway? And if you can't know that and be that and use that as your platform, that's your platform is who you are. That is your foundation. If you can't use that to have conversations with prospects and current clients, you have bigger problems than whether or not you've got AI on your website. And that's the biggest danger, I think.
What's the one piece of advice you'd give to the next generation of agency leaders to best prepare them for the future of our industry?
I think the best piece of advice I could give to agency leaders is similar to what I would give to any business leader, which is find a way on an ongoing basis to walk in the shoes of your clients. You know, when I early on, my very first job out of college, I was a young uh, marketing executive at Procter and Gamble, and at the time, the CEO was a guy named John Smale. And what John Smale used to do was listen to tapes of the consumer service folks responding to customers that called in on his way to work and on his way home from work. And that spread like wildfire throughout the company because he was the CEO listening to consumers talk about what they liked and didn't like about Procter and Gamble products. And when I think back about that, and that cast an incredible it shaped the culture in a way of Procter and Gamble. If this was so important to the CEO, then as a entry level marketing person, it was the least I could do is to listen to those things. And I think the magic of it was a way of doing it, of trying to sort of walk in the shoes of your customers or your clients. And I think the really good senior agency executives sort of do this matter of fact. They stay really close to their clients. They have the top to top calls. They are out experiencing the products and services of their clients. And I don't think there's there's no way to replace that firsthand knowledge if you're not getting your hands dirty in the business.
I think if agencies could commit to really knowing themselves, that would be my piece of advice for them. And what do I mean by know yourself? Or know thyself, as it's more often known as, right? You have to know who you are as an agency. What do you stand for? What makes you different? Um, what do you really deliver? What can you say about yourself that would inspire confidence in clients, but also inspire your team to do great work? Know yourself and be comfortable enough and mature enough to know that you can't be all things to all people. And I'm not suggesting you have to niche down. I don't mean that. But I mean, you have to know what role you play in the constellation of the agency world and what you do best that helps clients get to the outcome that they need. And it means knowing what you do well and what you don't do well, and not feeling like you have to bolt on what you don't do well just to say you do it. Agencies do that a lot, where they'll have every capability on their website, but when you dive in, they really don't know how to do PR. But they did it once, so they put it on their website, because why not? And I don't think that's a mature, full-throated acceptance and embracing of who you are and how you can be the best of that thing out in the marketplace. There's plenty of work to go around. I do believe in a world of abundance. And so you don't have to try to be everything to everybody and become then nothing to anyone. So that's what my word of advice would be, is get to know yourself best. Know thyself.